All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a genuinely fascinating and honestly pretty hard-hitting analysis by Abhijit Iyer-Mitra, all about the true mechanics of national growth. We constantly hear political rhetoric promising these quick fixes and miraculous economic jumps. But Iyer-Mitra's central thesis argues something much more sobering. Genuine national development relies on painful, invisible, and deeply systemic gears. We're going to look at the hard historical and economic precedents that completely challenge our most idealistic expectations about how a nation actually evolves from poverty to prosperity.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be breaking down 5 key areas: the myth of leapfrogging, the agricultural trap, the rule of law, foreign policy realities, and finally, the democracy pressure valve. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The myth of leapfrogging.
You hear politicians promise this all the time, right? The idea that a developing country can just completely bypass the messy stages of development and leapfrog from a farming-based society straight into the high-tech information age. Well, according to Iyer-Mitra, this is basically an anthropological impossibility. An economy actually needs the rigid structure, the surplus capital, and the massive social transformation that only industrialization provides before it can even think about building a sustainable service and information economy.
And the historical evidence for this is absolutely undeniable. Take Italy, for example. Historically, southern Italy was actually the wealthy agrarian powerhouse, while northern Italy was deeply impoverished. But the North used its agricultural surpluses to heavily industrialize. Fast forward to today, northern Italy is a super wealthy information age economy, while the South is lagging way behind. We see the exact same story in Belgium. The historically agrarian Flemish North only transitioned to the information age because they first mastered industrialization, completely outpacing the industrial Walloon South over time. You literally cannot skip that industrial stepping stone.
Moving on to Section 2. The agricultural trap.
So, it's really easy to assume that relying primarily on agriculture is the ultimate safety net. The logic goes, hey, if a country faces a global crisis or severe sanctions, at least it can feed its own people, right? But is agriculture actually a safe bet? To answer that, we have to look at a pretty shocking historical paradox involving one of the most isolated countries on Earth.
When we think of North Korea today, we picture severe poverty, right? An agrarian state that constantly suffers from devastating famines under heavy global sanctions. But Iyer-Mitra points out something wild. Before 1979, North Korea actually had the second highest per capita income in all of Asia, right behind Japan. It was a fully industrialized nation, but over time it deindustrialized backwards into a heavily agrarian state. And when you are reduced to a farming society in the modern age, a single bad crop yield or geopolitical sanction leads straight to starvation.
The crucial takeaway here is this: an industrial country actually has the infrastructure and the capital to rapidly set up an agricultural base if it needs to. But an agricultural country, it cannot just rapidly build factories and power grids out of nowhere. Remaining an agrarian society isn't a safety net. It's a profound vulnerability just waiting to be exposed.
Section 3. The rule of law.
So, what actually ties all these systemic failures together? Well, even if a nation desperately wants to industrialize, it literally cannot do so without the absolute foundational presence of the rule of law. Drawing on places like southern Italy or modern India, Iyer-Mitra points out that if the state lacks absolute authority, progress just completely stops. Without a state monopoly on violence, meaning the state is the absolute only entity with a legitimate authority to enforce rules, you cannot progress to the information age. To really ground this in a modern, practical example, let's look at energy infrastructure in India. You might ask, why don't private companies just step in and modernize the energy grid? It's because of a total lack of law and order. Private infrastructure operators are completely deterred from investing because they cannot legally collect what they're owed. If entire communities are stealing electricity and the police are unable to arrest these rule breakers because of interference from local political leaders, the investment is totally doomed. Private capital is never going to flow into a system where property rights and basic laws can't be strictly enforced.
Section 4. Foreign policy realities. Now, I want you to think about this highly specific number, 40,000 rupees. That is roughly 82 US dollars. According to Iyer-Mitra, this is the total funding provided to a PhD student at a premier Indian institution to travel and conduct on-the-ground geopolitical research abroad. Think about that for a second. When you are investing literal pennies into the scholars who are supposed to shape your global strategy, you simply cannot expect a world-class foreign policy. And this micro-deficit in human capital inevitably leads to massive geopolitical miscalculations. Take the multi-billion-dollar physical investments in ports like Chabahar in Iran or Gwadar in Pakistan. Modern megaships are not going to stop at secondary ports unless there is a massive industrial base nearby to actually justify the trip. Specifically, we're talking about an $80 billion economic hinterland. Without scholars doing the basic economic math beforehand, these billion-dollar ports just risk becoming completely useless vanity projects.
Finally, Section 5, the democracy pressure valve.
We enter our final act here by exploring how different governance models handle the brutal pain of true economic development. Historically, rapid industrialization has almost always been a murderous process. Whether in the Soviet Union or mid-century China, forcing an agrarian society into an industrial one required ruthless resource capture, costing millions of lives under dictatorships. Democracies, however, feature a built-in early warning pressure valve. A free press and voting essentially prevent these massive, lethal tragedies.
But, and this is a big but, the speaker notes that this very pressure valve comes at a steep economic cost. Because politicians must win elections and respond to public outcry, a functioning democracy struggles immensely to absorb the massive social upheaval and the ruthless resource capture required to quickly transition out of poverty. When the medicine is just too bitter, a democracy will naturally vote to spit it out, even if that means staying sick for a lot longer.
So, we conclude this explainer by leaving you with this ultimate dilemma derived from Iyer-Mitra's analysis. When it comes to escaping poverty and modernizing a nation, does the slow, messy, compromise-driven nature of democracy actually hinder essential growth, or is that exact sluggishness the absolutely only thing preventing catastrophic societal collapse and keeping the nation intact? It's a profound question about the true cost of progress. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope this structured look at the state of affairs has given you a totally fresh perspective on the complex gears of national development.